Hi Al, how you doing today? Today we're going to talk about manipulatives and bringing more use of manipulatives into the math classroom and talking about why we might want to do that, what some common challenges are, and maybe some steps we can use to kind of move more of those into our classroom and kind of help set the stage for that piece. So one of the first things I want to kind of lean into is a phrase I hear from a lot of teachers, whether they're talking to students, whether they're talking to other teachers, or maybe talking to me, and a phrase I hear over and over again is, "Hey, they're tools, not toys. They're tools, not toys." And I walk into a lot of classrooms and see a lot of classroom teachers saying this to students. Remember, everyone, they're tools, not toys. Let's not play with them. Let's use them the way they're supposed to be used. And I would challenge you to kind of reconsider the way that we approach that, because why can't they be both? Why can't they be toys that I can play with and explore with and kind of use, manipulate, kind of touch with my hands? But also, there's another time when I can use them to solve a problem and kind of defining that time when I can do that and saying, hey, there's a time when I'm going to allow students to play with them. You all, as adults, if I gave you some tiles, if I gave you some counters, many of you would play with them. You would touch them. You would kind of see what you can do with them. You'd explore with them. That's the point. That's what we want people doing. That's what we want students doing to give them manipulative so we can physically touch the math in front of us. Thinking about that too. And so if I'm physically touching the math in front of us, very often the person next to me is also going to want to talk about that. And we can have a good conversation. And it's such a good way to get students to be engaged in both mathematics and engaged in the student next to them, or maybe giving students one set of manipulatives between two of them, and they can have conversations. It's such a great way to introduce that. And along with some of that math thinking, yes, there's going to be some play. Again, that's kind of the point. They're tools, not toys. That's backwards thinking, is they're toys that we can use as tools, and thinking about this idea of embracing that and saying, hey, let's spend a minute, play with them. Let's spend a minute, explore them. Let's spend a minute, kind of create some new shapes. Now let me show you how you can use these to think about math. Now let me show you how you can use these tiles to think about algebra, to think about counting. We can talk about some of those strategies. And I can spend a few minutes saying, hey, now that we've all played with them, now that we've all used them as toys, I now want to show you, let's think about how can I use these to count to 10? Maybe I put them in a 10 frame. Maybe I put them in a 5 frame. How could I use these to represent algebraic thinking? Three yellow tiles plus one unknown equals 5. What does the unknown have to be? I can visually see some of these ideas. There's so many ways I can use these. Base 10 blocks are so vitally valuable when we're talking about regrouping. I don't have to think about crossing out numbers just to cross them out and say that's how we do it. Well, why does that work? Because that's what we do. I can literally talk about, hey, take a base 10 rod and exchange it for 10 ones, and I get to physically touch that. And I don't even need to write it out. I can, if I've got OT issues or even just thinking about time, I can use the manipulatives in this way. So as we're thinking about manipulatives, thinking about why are they valuable? Yes, of course, so we're going to have to introduce to the students how to use them and think about, okay, what are the ways we can use them? And I might do that whole class. I might do that small group. I would recommend introduce one set of manipulatives at a time and say, here's how we use this one. Now let's talk about how that was helpful to understand the math. Now let's talk about how we can kind of talk about the math. And now let's maybe draw a picture of it, or now let's represent that in another way, making those connections we're doing all of those times. So if we're thinking about all of those actions, that's really going to be helpful. Very often I do hear teachers say, yeah, but it's such a distraction. It's so hard when they're all out of the place. And it will be if we don't tell the students exactly what our expectations are. We need to set high expectations just like we set high expectations in everything. I worked with a student a few years back that was a fourth grade teacher. I think I just said student, but I worked with a teacher a few years back looking through here. And this teacher was saying, okay, we're going to use some base 10 blocks. And I saw the teacher use the base 10 blocks with the students. The students were using them to solve multi-digit number problems and doing that. And then the teacher said something like, okay, we're going to put them away in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. Before she got to 1, every student had their own blocks put away at the toolkit right in front of them. And I looked at her afterwards and I said, how did you do that so fast? And she said, practice. She said at the beginning of the year, I had the students take out the blocks and play with them. And then I counted down from 10 and said, okay, we're going to put them away. And then I took them back out and played with them. And then I count down from 10 and they put them away. And it took some time up front, but they learned the rules that, okay, there's going to be a time we can play with them. And then there's a time we need to put them away. I need to teach those rules. I can't just expect students will know what my expectations are if I don't teach them. So as we're thinking about manipulatives, let's think about rewording that idea of they're tools, not toys. No, they're toys and they're tools, and they can be useful for us to engage in discourse. They can be useful for us to engage in mathematical thinking, in conceptual thinking, conceptual understanding. We can then draw them when we want to get to that piece. We can then move to more algebraic, more abstract ideas. but they're such a valuable tool as we're doing this that is also a toy. We just need to help students to understand what our expectations are for us to be able to say, okay, here's our expectation, here's what we're doing, here's how we use them, here's how we put them away, here's how we take them out. I can't just expect students to know that on their own. So if that works for you, if you're thinking about using manipulatives or you've been having some challenges, give it another shot, try it out a few times, reintroduce that idea because there is such value of using manipulatives in the classroom. All right, all. Have a great day.